All right, let's just jump right into it. Welcome to this DesignToCode explainer. We're totally skipping the fluff today and diving straight into the absolute building blocks of modern web design. If you're looking to go from staring at a blank, intimidating screen to engineering a beautifully structured, highly functional website, well, you are in exactly the right place. But real quick, let me ask you something to get us started. Do you know the actual difference between a messy, thrown together amateur website and a highly professional one? It's a massive gap, and honestly, it's not about memorizing every single coding command that exists out there. The real secret is this. Professional web design is entirely about mastering the core fundamentals and leaning heavily into industry best practices. The best developers don't memorize the dictionary, they just deeply understand the principles, and that is exactly what we're going to unpack for you right now. Okay, Section 1, Intro to Tools in CSS. Let's lay down our foundation. To build that foundation, you obviously need the right setup. If HTML is the bare concrete structure of your house, CSS is the styling, the paint, the interior design. So, assuming you've got a solid code editor like VS Code fired up, you basically have two paths. First, there is inline or internal CSS, which is, frankly, a complete nightmare for maintenance. It clutters up your HTML and makes everything chaotic. Then there's the absolute gold standard, external CSS. Linking a completely separate style sheet is what keeps your codebase perfectly clean, highly scalable, and actually ready for real-world team collaboration. Moving on to Section 2, Understanding the Box Model. This is literally the physics of the web. If you only remember one conceptual thing from this whole explainer, let it be this. Every single element on a web page, every image, every button, every tiny paragraph is fundamentally just a box. Let's break that box down from the inside out. Think of it like a framed photograph. First, you have the content. That's your actual photo. Second is the padding. That's the white matting around the photo that gives it room to breathe. Third is the border, the physical wood of the picture frame itself. And fourth is the margin. That's the empty space on the wall between this frame and the next one over. Makes sense, right? Now, how do we actually measure these boxes without pulling our hair out? Here is a massive senior developer secret for your practical day-to-day work. Always use the property box sizing border box. By default, browsers are super weird. They don't include padding and borders in an element's overall width, which just leads to a ton of annoying math and totally broken layouts. Setting it to border box forces the browser to calculate the true exact width automatically. I promise this one line of code will save you hours of headaches. Section 3, Layout and Positioning. We understand the physics of our boxes, so let's start actually placing the furniture on our web page. Think about how these elements actually behave out in the wild. Block elements, like paragraphs or massive headings, are totally greedy. They demand 100% of the entire horizontal line width, and they force everything else to just drop right below them. Inline elements, so, like a span or a little button, they're super polite. They only take up the exact space they need for their specific content so they can happily sit side by side. Which brings us to a kind of tricky concept, positioning things manually. Relative positioning lets you nudge an item around using top, bottom, left, or right commands. But, and here's the kicker, it leaves a ghost of its original empty gap behind in the layout. Absolute positioning is totally different. It literally yanks the item right out of the normal page flow, letting you pin it exactly where you want relative to its nearest position parent. The rest of the page just acts like it doesn't even exist. Okay, let's talk about the rules of the styling game, CSS specificity. When two styles clash, who wins? It's a strict hierarchy. Generics like a div tag are at the bottom. Classes step it up a notch. IDs are higher still. But then there's the important tag. Honestly, consider this a giant red flag. Avoid using important at all costs. It forces styles to apply by overriding the entire natural hierarchy. And if you rely on it, it will eventually make your codebase completely unmanageable. Section 4, Responsive Design. Because, let's face it, building a digital house that only looks good on one specific screen size, yeah, that just doesn't cut it anymore. So how do we actually handle this? How do we stop a complex, beautiful layout from totally breaking, overflowing the screen, and just looking terrible when someone opens it on a tiny smartphone? It all comes down to media queries and breakpoints. By setting specific maximum width rules, we trigger targeted style changes. Like when the screen shrinks below 480 pixels, boom, our mobile styles automatically kick in. Hit 768 pixels and we trigger the tablet designs.
At 1024 pixels, we accommodate laptops. It's like shape-shifting your design so it adapts flawlessly to literally any device.
Section 5. Effects and Animations. The house is built, logically structured, and totally responsive. Now we add that final polish. This is where your site goes from basic to feeling incredibly premium. A great example of this is user interaction. When you combine a pseudo-class like hover with a transition property, you get those buttery, smooth, interactive buttons that users absolutely love. Instead of just harshly snapping to a new background color when you mouse over it, the button transitions smoothly over a few milliseconds. It gives this incredibly satisfying tactile feedback.
Let's take it even further with infinite keyframe animations. Building one is beautifully simple. Step 1, give your animation a name. Step 2, set your starting point at 0%. Step 3, define the endpoint at 100%. By tossing a transform property inside those percentage steps, you can dynamically float elements up and down the page forever. It is a fantastic way to create a really engaging visual experience.
Section 6. Clean Architecture with BEM. Now that we have all these structural rules, layouts, and cool animations playing together, we desperately need a way to keep this whole ecosystem perfectly organized. Enter the industry standard, BEM. It stands for Block, Element, Modifier. Look at this naming anatomy for a second. Box, underscore, underscore, button, dash, dash, red. The block is your standalone component, the box. The element is a smaller piece inside it, the button, separated by 2 underscores. And the modifier, separated by 2 dashes, is just a visual tweak, like red. This strict naming convention is an absolute game changer for preventing chaotic styling collisions across your projects. And honestly, it really boils down to this. Using BEM makes your code incredibly readable and perfectly standardized for teamwork. When you write your CSS this way, you're literally signaling to employers and senior devs that your code is highly maintainable, totally professional, and ready to scale. Wow, we've covered some serious ground today, all the way from the core physics of the box model to advanced BEM architecture. You know the fundamental principles now, so what is the first real project you're going to build? Challenge yourself. Open up your editor and start writing some real code right now. And hey, if you want to keep leveling up your skills with highly practical tutorials just like this one, make sure you subscribe to the DesignToCode channel. Keep learning, keep building, and I'll catch you in the next one.